My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 25 years old, I live in Dayton, Ohio, and I still remember the exact sound my mother made the day she realized the money wasn't hers. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even a word. It was like the air left her body all at once, as if someone had punched a hole straight through the life she thought she had carefully controlled. The funny thing is, for more than 20 years, I didn't even know that account existed. I worked double shifts, packed my own lunch in cheap plastic containers, worried about gas prices and medical bills, while my parents quietly guarded a secret they believed they had under lock and key. A hidden inheritance my grandfather left with my name on it, and my name only. If you're listening to this and you're over 65, maybe you know what it feels like to look back over decades and suddenly see that some of the help you gave your family came at your own expense. And maybe, just maybe, they were counting on you never finding out the truth. I grew up in a small one-story house off Linden Avenue, not far from a faded strip mall with a Walmart at one end and a Dollar Tree at the other. We were not poor, but we were never comfortable. That's what my mother always said. "Money doesn't grow on trees, Laura." She'd snap whenever I asked for new sneakers instead of the ones with the worn-out soles. My father would sit at the kitchen table with his coffee in a chipped white mug from some gas station along I-70, flipping through the local paper like he didn't hear a thing. We measured everything in coupons and overtime. Extra hours at the factory, cutting meat into thinner slices so it would stretch across the week. My parents reminded me often that they were doing their best. And to be fair, some days I believed them. My grandfather, though, my dad's father, Henry Bennett, was different. He lived alone in a small brick house near the old post office with a front yard he mowed himself until he was 81. He drove a beige Ford Taurus and kept his bills in a neat stack on the corner of his kitchen table. No credit cards, just his worn leather wallet and a few envelopes. He'd slip $20 bills into my hand when my mother wasn't looking. "For your books," he'd whisper, even when I was 35 and long past college. I never saw him as rich. He wore the same brown jacket for 15 years and still used a flip phone that barely texted. But he had this quiet way of talking about planning ahead and not leaving loose ends. I thought he meant funeral expenses and maybe a little cushion for my father. I never imagined he meant me. When he had his last stroke at 86 and ended up at Miami Valley Hospital, everything moved fast. One week, he was still grumbling about the price of milk. The next, he was gone. My father handled the funeral, the paperwork, the calls. My mother handled the gossip and the casseroles. I asked if Granddad had left any kind of will. My father shrugged. "Just enough to cover things," he said. "Nothing big. He was on Social Security, you know that." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Years passed. My husband, Mark, and I divorced in my early 40s. We split a 20-year marriage, 2 kids, and not nearly enough savings. I took a job as a receptionist at a small clinic, 20 minutes from home, watching the gas needle every week as it dipped toward empty. I shopped sales at Kroger, got excited when ground beef went on discount, and poured my worry into quiet late-night prayers. Meanwhile, my parents kept aging in their little house. My mom upgraded to nicer clothes from Kohl's. My dad suddenly had a newer Ford F-150, used, but still much nicer than anything he'd driven before. When I asked how they afforded it, my mother rolled her eyes. "Your father finally got some back pay from the union," she said. "You don't have to inspect everything we do, Laura." I let it go. Again. Because that's what adult children do sometimes. We trust. Or maybe we're too tired to fight. The first little crack in the story showed up on a Tuesday afternoon when a letter arrived at my house from a bank I barely recognized. "Cumberland Trust and Savings," the envelope said in dark blue lettering. "Nashville, Tennessee." I almost tossed it in the junk pile. I hadn't lived anywhere near Tennessee in my entire life. But there was my name in clear print. Ms. Laura A. Bennett. I opened it at the kitchen counter between reheating leftover lasagna and feeding my old cat, Sophie. Inside was a polite letter that started out like all bank letters do. "Thank you for your continued trust, blah, blah." And then a line that made me set the fork down. "Due to inactivity and recent regulatory changes, we require direct confirmation from you regarding the status of account ending in 4821, established in 2003 under your name as primary beneficiary." I frowned. 2003. That was the year my grandfather had his first minor stroke. I read the letter twice. Something in my chest fluttered. At first, I thought it was a scam. We've all heard the stories, right? Fake accounts, fake banks, people trying to get you to give up your social security number. I almost threw it away. But down at the bottom of the page, I saw something that stopped me. Custodian, Henry L. Bennett. I sat down. My knees didn't feel steady enough to hold me. My grandfather's full name. His middle initial. The exact one he'd insisted on every time he signed anything official. I felt a strange mix of confusion and something else. Hope? Suspicion? I wasn't sure. I called the bank number on the letter, fully prepared to hang up if someone with a thick script voice asked for my passwords. Instead, I got a calm woman with a Midwestern accent. "Thank you for calling Cumberland Trust and Savings. This is Rebecca. How may I help you today?" I read her the reference number. I spelled my name. I gave my date of birth. She put me on hold for a few seconds. I heard soft instrumental music, the kind they pipe into elevators and waiting rooms. Then she came back. "Yes, Ms. Bennett. I see the account here," she said. It was opened in May 2003 as a custodial inheritance account by a Mr. Henry L. Bennett, listing you as the sole beneficiary. We've been mailing notices to the address on file for some time. I felt my pulse in my ears. "What address do you have?" I asked. She read off my parents' address, the house I grew up in, the house they still lived in. "That's not my mailing address," I said quietly. "Has it ever been updated?" "No, ma'am. It appears not. All previous mail has been sent there." Something cold slid down my spine. For 20 years, letters about an account in my name had been going to my parents' house. They had never mentioned a word. I didn't tell my parents anything right away. It might sound strange, but at 52, I suddenly felt like I was 16 again, holding a secret out of sheer self-protection. I told Rebecca I would come in person. She said that was perfectly fine, though the bank was in Nashville. "Do I have to come all the way there?" I asked. "You can visit one of our partner branches," she said. "There's one in downtown Dayton. They can verify your identity and help you access all the details." The next day, I took off work. I told my boss I had a personal matter. At my age, that usually means doctors or funerals. No one asked questions. Downtown Dayton isn't glamorous. We've got some old brick buildings, a few half-empty offices, a Starbucks squeezed between a law firm and a nail salon. The partner bank was on the corner, glass doors, American flag, the usual. Inside, it smelled like printer toner and carpet cleaner. A young man in a navy blazer, whose name tag said Evan, greeted me with a professional smile. I handed him the letter, my driver's license, and the story I had pieced together in my mind. He typed on his keyboard, the clacking sound oddly loud in the quiet branch. After a few minutes, his eyebrows lifted. "Ms. Bennett, yes, I see it here," he said. "Custodial trust account, opened in 2003, funded by a Mr. Henry Bennett." He hesitated. "This is definitely you?" I pointed at the screen. "That's my date of birth. That's my social security number." He nodded slowly. "Well then," he said, "I think you might want to sit down for this next part." They put me in a small office with glass walls and a fake plant in the corner. Evan walked in with a folder, followed by an older woman with silver hair pulled back into a low bun. Her name was Diane Miller, Senior Trust Officer. She closed the door gently behind her as if we were about to perform surgery. "Ms. Bennett," she said, taking a seat across from me. "Before we go into details, I want to confirm something. You said you were not aware of this account until you received that letter?" "That's right," I said. "I had no idea." "And your parents handled your grandfather's affairs when he passed?" "Yes. My father was his only child." She exchanged a quick look with Evan. Then she opened the folder. "Your grandfather set up this account believing it would help you later in life," she said. "He specified that it was to remain in his name as custodian until you turned 35, at which point you would have full rights to access and manage it." I stared at her. "I'm 52. "Yes," she said softly. which means you could have accessed it 17 years ago. Something hot rose behind my eyes. I blinked fast. Can you tell me, how much is in there? I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She slid a printed statement across the desk. I looked down. There were several line items: dividends, interest, some mutual funds I'd never heard of, mentions of companies like Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, and Apple. But my eyes went straight to the bold number at the bottom. Current balance, 1,842's 937 $. For a moment, the room became very small. The air felt thick. I put my hand on the table to steady myself. I thought about every bill I had worried over. Every time I told my daughter, we can't afford that right now. Every night I'd lain awake wondering how I would ever retire. Almost $2 million. In my name. Sitting quietly for 20 years while I counted pennies. Is this a mistake? I whispered. No, ma'am, Diane said. Your grandfather was a disciplined investor. From what I can see, he put in small amounts consistently over many years. Pensions, savings, some stock purchases in the late 90s and early 2000s. The Apple shares alone grew significantly after 2007. He clearly intended this to be your safety net. I let out a shaky laugh. Safety net, I repeated. Suddenly I remembered something. My grandfather, sitting at his kitchen table, telling me, when you're older, you won't have to worry the way we did. I'd assumed he meant I'd make better choices, maybe marry someone with a steady job. I had not imagined this. Then another thought stepped forward, dark and sharp. If the statements had been going to my parents' house all those years, then they had seen the account. They had watched that balance grow. And they had said nothing. For a few days, I didn't confront them. I met with Diane again. She explained my options very calmly, like she did this sort of thing all the time. She told me I could transfer the account fully into my own name, change the address, and set up a meeting with a financial planner. She also told me that legally my parents had no right to the money, even if they thought anything, she said gently. This was never their account. It was always yours. I went home and sat at my kitchen table with the statement spread out in front of me. My cat hopped up and sat on the paper like she was trying to anchor me to reality. Part of me wanted to run to my parents' house and scream. Another part of me, the older, more tired part, wanted to just quietly move the money and never speak of it. But then, my mind started replaying all the years between my 35th and 52nd birthdays. The year my daughter needed braces and I took out a high-interest credit card. The winter, my car's transmission failed and I had to borrow money from my parents. Money my mother handed over with a long lecture about responsibility, while my father kept his eyes on the TV. The time my mother suggested I sell my grandmother's old jewelry if things are really that bad, knowing how much those pieces meant to me. I realized something hard. It wasn't just that they'd stayed silent. They had watched me struggle and still presented themselves as my rescuers, my only safety net. All while sitting on envelopes with my name on them. That's when the anger found its shape. Not a wild, screaming anger. A cold, very clear anger. The kind that doesn't break things. It rearranges them. I decided I wouldn't go to their house alone. I wanted someone there who understood the legal side, because I'd spent my whole life being talked over by my parents, especially my mother. She could turn any confrontation into a story where she was the victim. So I made an appointment with a local attorney, Michael Carter, a man in his early 60s with kind eyes and a tired suit. His office smelled like old paper and coffee. I told him everything. I laid out the bank letter, the statements, the dates. He listened quietly, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he sat back and let out a low whistle. Ms. Bennett, he said, I'm going to be very direct. Legally, your parents never had any right to that money. It was set up for you. They may have known. They may have chosen silence out of greed, fear, or some twisted idea of control. But the law is not on their side. Can I do anything about that? I asked. You've already taken the most important step, he said. You've moved the account into your name, correct? Yes. Good. Now, as for their behavior, if they withheld statements or interfered with your mail, we could theoretically talk about mail tampering or fraud. But after this many years, it would be complicated. There's one thing, though, that you can absolutely do. What's that? Tell them the truth with someone like me in the room so they can't twist it, he said. Make it clear that the money is yours, that you know they knew, and that you're setting boundaries from here on out. I hesitated. Is that really justice? He smiled sadly. At our age, justice looks different than it does at 20. You're not going to get back the years you struggled, but you can stop them from controlling the next 20. That has value. We scheduled a meeting, not at their house, at his office. We told my parents we needed to discuss a legal matter related to Granddad. My mother's immediate response was, "What now?" But she agreed. My father said nothing, which was his usual way. The day of the meeting, the sky was gray and low, Ohio in full mood. I sat in the small conference room with my hands clasped in my lap. The table was a cheap laminate that pretended to be wood. My parents came in together. My mother wore a navy blouse with a gold necklace I'd never seen before. My father wore his faded work jacket, the one with his name stitched on the front. Gary. They looked older, lines deeper, shoulders stooped. It hit me that they too were running out of time. Is something wrong with the estate? My mother asked, not even sitting yet. Because we signed everything years ago. I don't want any more trouble. Please have a seat, Michael said politely. They sat. My mother crossed her arms. My father stared at the table. Michael began with something simple. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, thank you for coming. We're here to discuss a trust account your father, Henry Bennett, established in 2003. My mother's face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. A tightening around her mouth. I thought all that was taken care of, she said quickly. There wasn't much. Michael slid a copy of the statement onto the table, turning it so they could see. This is the account he set up in your daughter's name, he said. Laura is the sole beneficiary. My father's eyes moved to the paper. My mother didn't look down at first. Then curiosity, or fear, won, and she glanced. Her hand flew to her mouth. For a woman who always had something to say, she suddenly had none. The number might as well have been written in fire. My father blinked. Once, twice. His face went pale. Is that right? He asked quietly. That can't be right. It's correct, Michael said. Your father was very careful. Each contribution, each investment is documented. He chose to list Laura as the sole beneficiary. The account has been active and growing for 20 years. My mother finally found her voice. Well, obviously it helped the family, she said. We handled his affairs, we paid for the funeral, No. Michael interrupted gently but firmly. This account was never for you. It was never listed in your names. Legally, it is and always has been Laura's property. I watched their faces carefully, and that's when the middle twist of this story revealed itself. Because instead of pure shock, I saw something that told me everything. Recognition. They already knew. They didn't realize I knew. You've been getting the statements for years, haven't you? I asked quietly. Silence. Every envelope, I continued, addressed to me but sent to your house. You never thought to mention it? My father swallowed hard. My mother's jaw clenched. They were confusing, she said. We thought it was a mistake. Your grandfather didn't have that kind of money. But you kept opening them, I said. You saw the amounts. You saw my name and you never told me, not once. My mother's eyes flashed. We were protecting you, she said. You would have wasted it. You married that loser, Mark. You never listened to us about money. There it was. Not regret, not apology, justification. As if she had been the guardian of something she had no right to touch. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Protecting me? I asked. Is that what you call watching your daughter work herself half to death while you kept quiet about a small fortune in her name? My father finally spoke. We we thought maybe it would be better if we helped manage it, he muttered. Keep it in the family, you know. Your mother worried you'd give some to your ex or waste it on. On what? I interrupted. Dental bills? Car repairs? Rent? Michael cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, he said, whether your intentions were good or not, the law is clear. This money is not yours. It never has been. Laura has already transferred the account fully into her control. She is also within her rights to limit or end financial involvement with you moving forward if she chooses. My mother stared at me, stunned. You moved it? Yes, I said. To my address. My name, my control. Her face twisted. After everything we've done for you, she said. We helped with your car, your kids, With money from this account? I asked softly. The room went very quiet. Because that was the next little twist I had already suspected. Some of the help they had given me over the years had come out of a well they never told me I owned. My father's eyes dropped. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Here's where the revenge part comes in. But it might not sound like the revenge you're used to hearing about. There were no screaming matches in parking lots, no throwing plates, no dramatic exits to the sound of thunder. Life is not a movie, especially not at 52. My revenge was legal, quiet, and final. Through Michael, I documented everything. The proof of the account, the years of mail sent to their address, the dates, the balances. We didn't press charges. It would have been difficult and messy after so long, and I didn't have the appetite to drag my family through court. But I did do 3 very specific things. First, I had the bank trace any withdrawals or transfers from the account over the years. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, my parents hadn't actually been able to access the funds directly. They'd just watched the statements, knowing the money was there. They had more knowledge than power. That was its own kind of sickness. Second, I drew up a living will and trust of my own. I named my children as beneficiaries, and I included very clear instructions. They would each receive their portion directly, not through anyone else. No secrets, no intermediaries, no protecting them by hiding what was theirs. I even sat my kids down, both in their late 20s now, and showed them the documents. Why are you telling us all this so soon? My son asked. Because secrets are expensive, I said, and I'm done paying for them. Third, I set boundaries with my parents that they never expected from their grateful daughter. I told them, calmly, that I would no longer be asking them for financial help. I told them I knew they had known about the account for years. I told them I would not be cutting them off from their grandchildren, but I would also not be pretending that nothing had happened. You had a choice, I told my mother one night on the phone. You could have told me the truth when I turned 35. You could have sat me down and said, your grandfather did something for you. Let's figure out how to use it wisely. Instead, you chose control and silence. That was your decision. This is mine. She hung up on me. We didn't speak for 2 months. During that time, I met with the financial planner recommended by Diane at the bank. We talked about what almost $2 million could do for someone my age. Not just vacations or a nicer car, but security, health insurance, a modest house where I wouldn't be one medical bill away from disaster. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night. The main twist in this whole story isn't the money, though. It's what I eventually found in a safety deposit box at the bank, 6 months after all this began. Diane called me one afternoon. We were auditing old records, she said, and we found something that belongs to you. Your grandfather rented a box here. You're listed as the successor. Inside the box was a small stack of papers and one handwritten letter in my grandfather's shaky script, dated 2 months before he died. Laura, it began, if you are reading this, it means the bank finally got a hold of you and not just your father. I had to sit down right there in the little vault room to keep reading. I love my son, he wrote, but I know how your mother is about money. I have seen her take and call it helping. I have seen her hold it over you. I set up this account in your name because I want you to have something that is yours, not theirs. If they hid this from you, I am sorry. I tried to make it simple. But sometimes people cling to what was never meant for them. Use this money to live with less fear. Take care of your health. Take a trip if you can. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve it. And if you can, forgive them someday. Not because they did right, but because you deserve peace. Love, Granddad. He knew. He knew them. He knew me. He had planted little clues all along in his conversations, his insistence on my independence, his quiet warnings about not letting people hold money over your head. I just hadn't recognized them as clues at the time. I cried like a child in that vault room, alone with a letter from a man who had been gone for more than a decade. That was the real twist. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was clarity. So, what's the practical meaning of all this? If you're over 65 and listening to this, maybe you're not the struggling daughter. Maybe you're the parent or the grandparent. Maybe you are sitting on a secret right now, telling yourself you're protecting someone by not telling them the truth about money, property, a will, a house, and insurance policy. I want you to think very carefully about that. Are you really protecting them? Or are you protecting your own sense of control? Because here's what I learned. Silence around money is one of the deepest forms of betrayal in a family. It teaches children, even when they're grown, that they cannot fully trust what they're being told. It turns love into a transaction. My parents didn't hit me. They didn't scream obscenities at me. They showed up at my kids' birthdays and helped fix my leaky sink. They also watched me drown in worry while they held onto a life raft with my name on it and never tossed it out. Was I right to move the money and set boundaries? I believe so. Was I right not to press charges? Some people would say I was too soft. Others would say going after two elderly parents in court would make me the villain. That's the thing about these situations. There is no clean, easy moral. If you're in my position, an adult child who finds out about hidden finances, ask yourself, what outcome do you really want? Is it punishment? Is it protection? Is it peace? Sometimes you can't have all three. If you're in my parents' position or my grandfather's, ask yourself, what story do you want your children and grandchildren to tell when you're gone? Do you want them to say, they trusted me enough to be honest? Or, they controlled me even from the grave? In the end, my relationship with my parents didn't completely break, but it did change. We see each other on holidays. We speak, but there's a line now that wasn't there before. A boundary made not of anger, but of understanding. I no longer ask them for financial help. I no longer let them into that part of my life. They know I know. And that knowledge has finally balanced the scales, at least a little. My grandfather's money allowed me to pay off my debts, move into a small townhouse with a real porch swing, and set aside savings so my children won't have to worry about me when I'm 80. I don't live like a millionaire. I still shop sales. I still buy store-brand cereal. But there is a softness at the edges of my days now that wasn't there before. Was it fair that I worked so hard all those years while that account sat untouched? No. Was it fair that my parents kept that secret? Absolutely not. But life, as you know if you've made it past 65, rarely hands out fairness neatly. What we do get, sometimes, is a chance to decide how the story ends. My grandfather tried to ensure I would have choices he never had. My parents tried to hold on to control they were never meant to have. And I, eventually, chose to step out of that old pattern of silence and into something quieter but stronger. Owning what is mine. Telling the truth, even when it's years late. And refusing to pass on the same secret-keeping sickness to the next generation. So, I'll leave you with this question. If there's a hidden account in your family, money, truth, apology, forgiveness, what would it look like to finally bring it into the light? You might be surprised, as I was, to find out that the real inheritance is not the dollars. It's the courage to stop lying to each other,